Good evening, I'm Saraya Mia. You're watching AWANI tonight. The Finance Ministry has given preliminary approval for an additional allocation of 1 billion ringgit to upgrade border infrastructures in Sabah and Sarawak. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the approval was given following his recent discussion with Indonesian President Joko Widodo regarding the relocation of Indonesia's capital to Nusantara, Kalimantan, which shares a border with the two regions.
Maka kita telah putuskan untuk memberi peruntukan tambahan bagi penyediaan custom, CIQ, sempadan dari segi keselamatan dan meningkatkan upaya kedua-duanya. Custom, CIQ dan immigration, CIQ sebenarnya, dan keselamatan, polis dan kemudian tentera, dan ketiganya prasarana asas seperti jalan raya. Kerana kita tidak patut dilihat terlalu taif.
He said this after chairing the Malaysia Agreement 1963 MA63 Implementation Action Council meeting in Sarawak on Friday.
Anwar also said the federal government has agreed to increase the special grant to Sabah and Sarawak under Article 112D of the Federal Constitution. For a start, the Finance Ministry would raise the amount to 300 million ringgit for Sarawak, while Sabah would receive 260 million ringgit. The amount, he said, was only for the initial stage before a specific formula is agreed upon. Under MA63, the special provision of 112D allocates 16 million ringgit and 25 million ringgit to Sabah and Sarawak, respectively. Anwar said the amount should have been reviewed every 5 years, but that has not occurred. Any change in the designation of Sabah and Sarawak from states to regions must first be referred to the Malay rulers. However, the Prime Minister said any terminology used would not affect the status of Sabah and Sarawak as separate and equal entities with Peninsular Malaysia.
Perlembagaan dalam perjanjian yang dimeterai itu disebut negeri wilayah semenanjung Tanah Melayu dan negeri-negeri Borneo states. Dari segi pelaksanaan itu jelas dia tiga entiti. Sama ada disebut negeri atau wilayah, dia tidak merubah sikap kerajaan dan pendirian kita bahawa entitinya adalah Sabah, Sarawak dan semenanjung Tanah Melayu, bukan negeri-negeri. Tetapi pindaan mana-mana istilah ini harus dirujuk kepada Raja-Raja Melayu kerana ini masalah perbatasan dan kemudian Parlimen.
He also said he had not brought up the matter with the Malay rulers but had an initial discussion with the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Last week, Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi said in his policy speech at the UMNO General Assembly that Sabah and Sarawak were now accorded the status of regions instead of states within Malaysia. In response, Sarawak Premier Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg said this was just a proposal and had not been gazetted.
Federal departments will be given 3 months to confirm if they have plans to develop state land leased to them for public projects. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the state lands must be surrendered back to the state if there aren't any plans for development.
Dimohon tahun 80, diluluskan tahun 81. Sekarang 2022 belum ada pelaksanaan, ada perancangan umum. Maka oleh demikian kita bagi tempoh 3 bulan untuk tetap ada kepastian. Kalau benar tidak ada sekolah yang akan dibangunkan dan tidak ada peruntukan, maka tanah tersebut harus diserahkan kembali kepada negeri dengan harga asal.
Anwar said the Ministry of Finance will decide on the price of the land, but said it would not be justified to seek the present market price. The Prime Minister said Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof, who is also the chairman of the MA63 Technical Committee, will call for a meeting to discuss the issue. Malaysia will soon have a single agency with full authority at the country's entry points. Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail said the government was fine-tuning the setup of the single border control agency and that discussions were in final stages.
The Single Border Agency was not a new approach, as discussion on its implementation started since early 2018.
Mereka sudah pun berada pada fasa-fasa akhir ke arah itu. Istilah single border itu memberikan konotasi bahawa kita ke arah mempunyai satu agensi tunggal yang berkuasa ke atas sempadan, kan. Tapi of course kita ada beberapa akta kawal selia, agensi-agensi berkenaan, semua tu kita kena streamlinekan lah.
He added that the government was studying examples and best practices from countries with single border control agencies, such as the United Kingdom, the US, New Zealand, Canada and Singapore.
In other news, Malaysia's daily COVID-19 cases remained below 500 since China reopened its borders on January 8th. Health Minister Dr. Zaliha Mustafa adds that no travellers from China have tested positive for the virus at the country's international entry points so far.
Based on the ministry's reports, Dr. Zaliha said there have been 28,705 arrivals from China between January 8th to 17th. Only one arrival was found to have a fever but tested negative for COVID-19. She added that the country has been recording 3-digit cases since December 17th last year. Vaccination rates have also increased in the last 2 weeks, with over 16.2 million primary booster doses administered. There's also been an increasing trend in the uptake of the second booster dose, with over 733,000 doses administered.
A report has been lodged with the Registrar of Societies ROS over the possible violation of UMNO's constitution over the issue of no contest for the top 2 party posts. Terengganu UMNO member Aizat Fikri Nasir and Negeri Sembilan UMNO member Fikri Firdaus claimed that the tabling of the motion at the recent UMNO General Assembly breached Article 10 of the party's constitution.
Aizat claimed that the no contest motion was an additional motion raised at the Assembly, and according to party rules, a notice of 14 days must be given before a motion could be tabled. He said there had been no discussion about the motion with grassroots members and no explanation made by the Supreme Council. Muhammad Fikri, meanwhile, was of the view that any additional motion should first be brought up at the divisional and branch levels so as to not cause dispute. During the Assembly on January 14th, Negeri Sembilan delegate Shukri Samsudin proposed a motion to exclude the posts of President and Deputy President from being contested during party elections, which must be held by May. The motion was unanimously passed.
How concerning is the continued spread and growing influence of hate-based content and ultra-nationalist narratives in the Malaysian digital public sphere post-GE15? Tonight on Consider This, we ask guests what policy responses are available. Let's take a short break. Stay tuned.
New Catador Fondant au Beurre and Cafe Latte Brownie with Australian almonds in rich butter fudge ice cream and Italian chocolate pieces in Cafe Latte ice cream, bringing unforgettable and elevated moments at home. Now available in 2 new flavors.
喂，小财神，你借的云还没给钱嘞？没事。Thank you.
Welcome back. Japan is mulling to downgrade COVID-19 to a less serious category, similar to that of the seasonal flu. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said today that the downgrade could be implied as early as this spring. He had instructed relevant ministers to consider the specific requirements for the reclassification of the virus. A classification downgrade to disease Category 5 from the current Category 2 would end quarantine for infected people and close contacts. Additionally, only patients with symptoms would be advised to wear masks in indoor public places, compared to a previous mandatory requirement for everyone. The last time COVID measures were revised was in May to lift the outdoor mask mandate. Meanwhile, South Korea also said it would drop its mandatory mask mandate in most indoor spaces from January 30th. This ends one of the country's last major pandemic restrictions, following a downtrend in new infections. Masks are still required in public transport and medical facilities. Meanwhile, a major blaze in South Korea destroyed at least 60 homes in one of the last remaining slums in Seoul, forcing the evacuation of about 500 people. The fire broke out earlier this morning in Guryong village near one of the capital's most affluent suburbs, Gangnam district. No deaths or injuries were reported.
10 helicopters and more than 800 firefighters and police were deployed to assist with emergency response. The fire was extinguished about 5 hours later, damaging an area of 2,700 square meters. Authorities have long warned that Guryong residents are at particular risk of disasters, including fires. It was also hit hard by flooding last August when record rainfall killed at least 13 people in Seoul, including some residents trapped in dingy basement homes. The Guryong slum has long been seen as a symbol of the gap between the rich and poor in South Korea, where Gangnam's high-rise apartment buildings lie less than a kilometer away from the shacks of Guryong.
Peruvian police unleashed tear gas on thousands of protesters poured into the capital Lima, demanding resignation of President Dina Boluarte. Demonstrators clashed with security forces who barred them from reaching government buildings, business and residential districts. Many protesters from the remote Andean region demand for former President Pedro Castillo to return to power. Castillo was Peru's first leader from the Andean background. Fueled by deep dissatisfaction over living conditions and inequality, protesters also demand dissolution of Congress and immediate elections. At least 54 people have been killed amid clashes with security forces since the unrest began a few weeks ago. Peruvian authorities were accused of using excessive force against protesters, including firearms. Police countered that their tactics match international standards. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a direct appeal to Germany to provide tanks to fight Russia's invasion. Western allies have already pledged billions of dollars in weapons for Ukraine, and some have promised to send their tanks, Kiev has requested, only if Germany gives its approval. Germany, however, has been hesitant to do so.
Zelensky's plea comes ahead of a key meeting of Western defense leaders in Germany. In recent days, German officials have indicated they won't send their Leopard tanks to Ukraine unless the US agrees to send theirs to Kiev, something the Pentagon has said for months it has no intention of doing, given the logistical costs of maintaining them. Leopard tanks are also held by a number of NATO nations, but whose transfer to Ukraine also requires Germany's approval. The tank standoff comes amid a much larger debate between the US and its European allies over whether to send increasingly sophisticated weapon to Ukraine. The UK, Poland, Finland and the Baltic states have been pushing for NATO members to provide heavier equipment to Kiev amid what they believe is a key inflection point in the war. There are signs that Moscow could be preparing an additional troop mobilization as it gears up for a new offensive.
A total of 20 people have been confirmed dead after an avalanche took place in the city of Ninchi on Tuesday. 53 survivors have been found, of which 5 were seriously injured, while 8 remain missing.
The avalanche occurred on a section of road connecting the town of Pai in Miling County with the Motor County in Tibet. With an average elevation of about 3,100 meters above sea level, Ninchi is a popular travel destination. Avalanches happen frequently in the mountainous region, which has dispatched around 1,000 rescue workers so far. Rescue efforts are underway to search for remaining signs of life and locate buried vehicles and people.
What pull factors might make the 2 million Malaysians living and working abroad consider a return to Malaysia? Tonight at 10:30 p.m. on It's About Youth, we discuss about reversing brain drain and retaining talent. Now that's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Saraya Mia and good night.